Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Off-Farm Income Podcast. Hey, thank you so much for joining us here on our YouTube channel for episode number 985. Well, hey, we get to go to Montana today, and that's always very exciting to me, as you can tell from the banner right above my head. And we're going to be speaking with a young lady at Red Lodge High School about her involvement in the meat goat industry, but then also how this is leading her into a career as a large animal veterinarian, and how she sees that as a void that she can fill coming back to her local community there in Red Lodge. It's really, really interesting. I think you're going to like getting to know Mrs. Sierra Boggio, and we're going to get into that for you right now. Sierra, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You bet. It is my pleasure, and I am always thrilled to speak with students from Montana, just because Montana is kind of my adopted home state after going to college up there. I loved it up there.
Yeah, it's an awesome place. It's really beautiful, and I love living here. So.
And you're in Red Lodge, right?
Yes.
So I get angry with myself because I've actually never been to Red Lodge, but all my friends when I lived in Bozeman took trips over to Red Lodge and talked about how beautiful it was. And I've never, ever gone. I can't believe I've never done that. Have you grown up there your whole life?
Yes, I've lived in the same house. So I live on a ranch outside of Red Lodge. So I've lived in the same house my entire life out here. So I've only known Red Lodge, but it's a really great place to live. So
very cool. You ever drive over the Beartooth Highway?
Yes.
Yeah? Awesome.
It's really pretty.
Yeah, Montana is a special place. That's really cool. Okay, so you're living on a ranch outside of Red Lodge. Cattle ranch? I know you're raising goats, so...
Yes, I have 300 head of cows and then probably like 350 head of sheep. So I have quite a few animals.
Okay, so sheep and cattle, and then somewhere in the mix is a goat. Just one goat.
Yes. Well, it originally started, my brother was obsessed with goats.
Okay.
So, I ended up getting into the goat business. We started with Nubian goats, which are used for milk, and now I'm into the boars. So I bought a few boars, and we've been breeding them and having kids, and now I am showing them at the fair.
Okay, very good. So your brother, explain to me what you mean by obsessed with goats.
He just wanted to have, he would always go to the fair and always want to like hang out with the goats, and that's just like where he was. So he fell in love with the goats after seeing them at the fair, and then decided to convince my parents to get some goats. And then later on, I really just fell in love with goats and just their temperament, and I just really fell in love with them.
Okay, very good. Now, this ranch that you live on, is this like a legacy type ranch? Has it been in your family for some time, or explain?
So it's been in my family for a long time. I'd say probably at least probably 100 years.
Oh, wow.
My grandparents have owned it and my great grandparents. So it went back quite a ways.
Wow, that's some old school Montana, getting back into the early 19th century, or early 20th century, I should say. That's pretty impressive. And the conditions up there can get pretty rough. You can get a lot of snow up there, can't you?
Yeah, we get quite a bit of snow. This year has been pretty nice, though, which is nice for...
Okay. Well, so you've got cattle. The random people going behind you are distracting.
Yeah.
So you've got cattle, you've got sheep and goats. Now, do you have a favorite species of livestock that you have out there?
You know, I really have a hard time picking a favorite. I don't think I could really pick one. They're all different and unique and fun in their own way.
Yeah, that's true. That's a very diplomatic answer right there, Sierra. That's really good. Okay, so you're a sophomore this year?
Yes.
Are you 15?
I'm 16.
16. And you've been involved with the FFA for how long?
This will be my third year.
Okay. So what brought you in? Why did you join the FFA?
I just think FFA is like a really big part of Red Lodge, and like a lot of kids do it. And like I said, like going to the fair and seeing kids in those bright blue jackets at the fair, you just wanted to do that, and it looked fun. So it was pretty natural for me to join the FFA.
Okay. Well, very good. I love it when there's a community that's like that, where everybody's kind of involved in the FFA, and it's just what you do. It's kind of a rite of passage, and it sounds like that Red Lodge may be that way.
Yeah, it really is. A lot of kids do it, and it's just pretty important to us here.
Very cool. Okay. Well, let's do this. I would love to acknowledge your FFA advisor or advisors. How many advisors do you have there at Red Lodge High?
Just one.
And who is that for you?
Miss Lammerman.
All right. Well, thank you very much for acknowledging her. Let's talk about your supervised agricultural experience. So I know it has to do with goats, but can you tell us all what you've been doing?
Yeah, so I mean, I've just been working with my goats. I mean, we've done a couple of different things over the years. We've tried just straight breeding with the Billy that I have, and then we've also gotten into AIing, which is kind of
Hmm.
an interesting experience. So I've just tried to do as many different things as possible with my goats just to have all those different kinds of experiences and kind of get into more of the veterinarian kind of side of my goats and just try and be well versed in everything that I do with my goats.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting that you're doing the AI. As I've been interviewing students from around the country, it's apparent that artificial insemination and then embryo transfers in goats are kind of emerging ways of doing this goat business. Would you say that's true?
Yeah, I think that's very true. I just think that with AIing, it's almost easier because ev- after having your Billy for so many years, you have to switch them out after so many years and then you have to deal with them like just trying to keep them alive. So I think that AIing is definitely a great solution for that. And it really gets I believe the AI semen that we used came all the way from like Nebraska, so it
Mm.
really gets totally different stock into your kind of herd without having to go get your own Billy from far away.
Sure. Now, are you doing the AI yourself, or at this point, are you having a veterinarian do it for you?
No, we currently are having the veterinarians help just to make sure that we're doing it properly.
Okay. It's interesting because obviously artificial insemination in cattle is widespread. A lot of people do it themselves. Most people really do it themselves. But you get in there and you can feel around and you can kind of feel where the pipette is and when you've got it in the right spot. But I imagine that would be a challenge with a goat. I've never actually seen it done with a goat, and I wonder how they know when they're in the right spot to go ahead and release the semen.
Yeah, I know that, like, especially with goats, it's harder because they're obviously quite a bit smaller than cattle.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a lot harder to do. And I know that the success rate is kind of slightly decreased just
Mm.
because they're smaller and it's harder for them to get it in the right place and such.
Have you noticed any sort of difference when you have a doe who's been artificially inseminated as compared to one who has had the buck servicer in terms of how many kids they have, single or triples or twins? Have you noticed any difference?
I personally, I've noticed, yes, that like I feel like in AI, personally, we've had a few more. Like usually
Hmm.
there have at least two and possibly three, whereas to when you just put them out with a buck, they're more likely to have just like one and possibly two. But yeah, personally, I've experienced having more kids with the AI.
That is interesting. Now, how long have you been using AI for your goats?
I've only used it for the past 2 years, so it's pretty new to me.
Okay. And are you breeding your goats just once a year, or are you trying to get kids out of them twice a year?
No, we've only been doing once a year just because I'm using them for the fair. So I found that, it's better and easier on my does when I only have to do it once a year
Hmm.
and that they can obviously stay on their mothers a little bit longer just so they're a little bit bigger for fair.
Okay. And then when is your fair? What time of year?
It's in the last week of July.
Okay, so last week of July. So that means your kidding season is going to be starting here pretty soon, right?
Yeah, we actually had two kids this morning.
Oh, you did. Okay.
So,
Is that
yeah.
was is that your first set this year?
Yeah, it is. They were kind of late this year, but I think it's because we've had a lot of warmer weather, so it's kind of thrown them off a little bit. But
Oh, okay. So under normal circumstances, you would already be well into your kidding season right now.
yeah, definitely. We would
Okay.
probably normally be expecting them like the last week in November, early December.
Okay. Now I'm not horribly far from you. I'm down in Idaho and we raise goats.
Mhm.
And we don't have great indoor facilities for kidding, so we push our kidding back deeper into the spring, so the weather's a little bit better. But obviously, your weather is going to be more extreme in Red Lodge than mine is just outside of Boise, Idaho. So, do you have an indoor facility for kidding to help those kids get up and get started?
Yeah, definitely. So we put them in, we have a heat room and we put them inside the barn when they're ready to kids. So we keep them inside for the first like few weeks or so. And then depending on their condition and like how well they're handling it, we'll put them outside or keep them in a little bit longer.
Okay. Now, are so the goats that you're kidding out, other than the ones you're going to show yourself, are you selling those kids to other exhibitors in 4-H and FFA for them to use at the county fair?
Yeah, we have been selling them to other members to show at the fair.
Okay. And then do you sell any breeding stock or exclusively show stock, I should say?
I mean, we've primarily done show stock, but on occasion, I feel like maybe one or two have went to breeding.
Okay. And what's the market like for goats up, in Montana? And what I'm asking about is where I'm at, we have a very, very strong market outside of the fairs. We have a very, very strong market for goats for consumption of meat. Are you experiencing that same thing with the goats that you're not selling into to exhibitors in Montana?
I really feel like goats aren't really a big market in Montana,
Mm-hmm.
and they're not really wanted for their meat in Montana, but more for show is mainly what they want
Gotcha.
them for.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting how it's developed around where I am at, and there's a lot of reasons for that. But it's one of those things that, well, I went to Montana State right there in Bozeman and got an animal science degree, and there was every class you could take on production of different livestock animals. But I'm trying to think back. I don't know that we had a goat production class when I was there. So that's how little they've been in Montana. It seems like.
Yeah, I feel like goats have just recently kind of come and resurfaced and become kind of popular in Montana. Because I know that, like, my parents, you never saw kids showing goats or
Yeah.
you never saw goats. So they've become popular really recently.
Huh. That's very interesting. Now with you guys raising, and my goodness, where you're at in Montana, cattle are not exempt from this, but if with goats and with sheep, especially, do you have many problems with predators on your ranch?
Yeah, we struggle with, I mean, coyotes is like kind of the main, but
Mm-hmm.
we've dealt with some bears over the years, which have really seriously impacted our livestock.
Yeah, I was gonna say I've been reading stories about that. I actually did an interview with a rancher up near Shoto, right on the base of the Rockies, and they had grizzlies that had killed some of their cattle. And so I was wondering about that with you because you're right there too, right next to the
Yeah.
mountains. Ah, very interesting stuff. Okay, okay. So, well, tell me about your business. So, how do you market your goats? How do people find out that you have these goats for sale and turn those folks into customers?
I'd say like mainly like at the fair when I'm meeting with fellow members of the FFA and 4-H, marketing them there where they can kind of get a feel for what they actually look like, and just it's kind of a small community, so you know a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like people just kind of know what you have, and just spreading it through like word of mouth when you meet people is mainly how I market my animals.
Got it. And have you had some success with the animals that you're showing in the arena?
Yeah, so I've had the past 2 years they've placed in carcass. So they not only are doing like looking nice on the outside, but they're
Hmm.
actually have some quality meat on the inside. So yeah.
That's great. So a couple blue ribbons, they help you sell those goats, right?
Yeah, of course.
That's fantastic. Well, good for you. Okay, so here you are. You're in your sophomore year of high school. You're well into your FFA journey now. Where do you want to take this over the next couple of years? And do you have any thoughts where you want to take this after high school?
Yeah, I mean, I personally would just like to further expand and increase the population of my herd and really do some more marketing to try and get my goats out there and give them out to people so that I can kind of create a name for myself and my goats.
Mm-hmm.
Even later after high school, I'd like to kind of continue working with my herd and increasing it and selling them to fellow members so that they can show it at the fair.
That is great. And do you know what you want to do when you finish up with high school? Have you figured
I
that
would like to become a veterinarian. So
Okay. Well, I kind of got that hint when you talked about that earlier, kind of focusing on the veterinary side of things. What is it about being a veterinarian that interests you?
I just think from living on a ranch, I just like to be able to learn how to better help animals. And I don't know, I just feel like being around animals all the time and having to try and like problem solve, like having sick animals and already trying kind of doing things similar to what veterinarians would do. I
Mm-hmm.
just kind of fell in love with that idea, and turning it into a profession would be really cool for me.
Gotcha. And are you thinking, I mean, you're coming off of a ranch, so are you thinking large animal vet, or are you thinking small, or maybe a combination of the two?
I think I definitely want to go back into the large animals to become a vet because I feel like that's kind of a smaller field and we don't necessarily have that many vets that are
Mm-hmm.
into large animals.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in some places, there can be a shortage of large animal vets when folks really need that help. So that's great. I'm happy that you're moving in that direction. Do you think you'll stay in Montana for your undergrad? Will you go to Montana State, or are you looking at some other schools too?
I definitely think that I'm probably going to go out of state just because there's not as many resources to become a vet in Montana, but I definitely want to come back here
Okay.
and work somewhere in Montana to be a
Yeah.
vet.
So you want to serve your home community when you do become a large animal vet. That is great. You know, that's funny. I a lot of people talk about veterinary school, but when I do interviews on this show and I interview students from rural areas that have come up ranching and dealing with livestock, so many of them have seen the need for a large animal vet in their own communities that they're going to go off, they're going to become that, and then they want to come back to serve those communities. And it's a great job. It's a very interesting career, but so many people just like yourself that I've interviewed look at it as a form of service. Do you kind of see it that way as well?
I just feel like being a large animal vet, like it's just very important because there's not many people that want to deal with large animals, but there's a big need for them. And, there's a lot of room for, like, there's so many different kinds of large animals. And I feel like there's not vets that are able to take care of all of them. Because I
Mm-hmm.
know, like, our vet personally that lives here, their only experience with goats was from our goats.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like there's just a need for them to be able to, vets to be able to handle not only just your like cows and horses, but also be able to take care of
Hmm.
like your goats and sheep and just better understand them.
Yeah, that is very interesting. Now, I've got to ask you this question, and this is really more on your brother than it is on you. But here on our farm in Idaho, we raise cattle, we raise pigs, and we raise goats. And when my daughter went into 4-H, she decided to show sheep, the one animal that we did not raise on our farm. So you described your parents as having cattle and sheep. So what did they think when I guess your brother, when he started this and went, well, I know we've got cattle and sheep sitting right over there, but I want to show goats.
Um, I just feel like he felt the need to want to work with them because we had never dealt with goats.
Yeah.
And you never really see goats around here, and that's just something totally different and not many people do it. So I feel like he just wanted to try something completely different and get to learn more about this animal
Oh,
because
okay.
there's not many around here.
I was just wondering if your parents had the same reaction as I had when my daughter chose sheep. Like, why? We've got all these animals sitting right here. Why something we don't have? But I'm more or less trying to make a joke here. So, okay. But I always fail. Sierra, whenever I try and make a joke, I flop. I should just stop trying. I should just never do it again. All right. Well, I want to wrap up with this question. So it's really interesting in speaking with you about everything you're doing in the area that you live in. And you've got this sense of service coming back to kind of fill a void that's there as a large animal vet. How has being in the FFA, how has that influenced you in terms of wanting to, I guess, provide service to your community?
Well, I feel like FFA really kind of taught like that there are holes in the veterinary livestock industry, and I feel like the FFA has just kind of presented to me like what are some of the areas that need help, and like what areas are struggling right now, and what areas do people need to go into to help our agricultural industries.
Oh, that's great. Well, Sierra, this has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing this with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for being here, everybody, and thank you to Sierra Boggio for coming on the Off Farm Income Podcast today and sharing all of that great information. Hey, we would love it if you would click that subscribe button, everybody, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and then, of course, connect with us everywhere else on social media. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn, all under the title Off Farm Income, and we'd love to connect with you there. And until next time, enjoy your journey to the ultimate lifestyle business, agriculture.